So, resting, reconnecting. The third step is to revise. You know, we get stuck, we get in a rut. How do we change things? We revise, one step at a time. What I would recommend, if you think, wow, I think I ought to investigate what it would mean today to keep the fourth commandment. What would that look like in my life? I think it's a process, and as I said, we have to kind of commit to the journey and pick one thing to engage in and one thing to refrain from as a starting point. So if you were to say, okay, I'm going to do this, and next Sunday, or this Sunday, it's going to look like any other Sunday, except maybe I'll turn off that computer. Maybe I'll set aside the laundry for one day. Pick one thing that you want to have freedom from. You know, the Sabbath commandment in Deuteronomy, God says, keep the Sabbath holy and everybody in your household because you used to be slaves in Egypt. Keep the Sabbath because you were a slave? Well, slaves don't get a day off. And we sometimes just put ourselves in slavery. We want to take back the burden that God has freed us from. Maybe you're a person who loves solitude. Solitude and Sabbath are really two different practices, because I think a lot of people say, well, I would have trouble just sitting around doing nothing. And a lot of times for us, in our house, Sabbath is not necessarily sitting around doing nothing. It's setting aside our tasks so that we can engage in a relationship with God and with other people. So that might include, going for a bike ride, playing a board game, taking a walk, going to one of my daughter's soccer games. Now, there are people who say, oh, you're not allowed to do that. For me, we really wrestled with this. Okay, my daughter likes to play soccer. Sometimes she's been on a team that had a game on a Sunday. What do we do with that? Thankfully, our church has services on Saturday night, so we can kind of flex so that we're able to worship as part of the weekend. One of the things that God really convicted me about, I said, I want this day to be a day that's recreational for my daughter, that's fun and not stressful. One of the things that keeps it from being stressful is she's only allowed to be in one sport at a time. So we're not running from soccer to volleyball to baseball. And we don't do errands on the weekends, so we're not running from soccer game to Jewel. But the biggest thing is that when when my daughter first started playing soccer, she was pretty little, and I was overly engaged in the outcome of the game. Do you know what I mean? I was one of those parents who was like, couldn't keep my back end in the chair. I had to be up and directing and yelling. And sometimes I would coach, but after a while, I had to give that up. And eventually, I had to give up yelling at soccer games. And that was a Sabbath practice for me, because I just tend to be a very enthusiastic person who lives vicariously through my children. No. I asked myself that, though. I go, who's playing this game, you or her, And I found that, and God brought this to my attention in his usual sense of humor by having my daughter mention it on the way to a game. Mommy, can you please not yell at my soccer game? I'm just trying to help you. I'm sorry, I forgot. Okay, okay, I'll try to remember. Maybe we should have a signal, she says. Okay. She's like that. I said, okay. And of course, in the game, she was playing goalie, which she never played, and she was like halfway up the field, and I'm like, get back. And she's like, as the people go flying by her, God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he? I needed to learn the discipline of silence on the soccer sidelines and to realize that this was my daughter's recreation and that she could rejoice in just having a good time. And what made it stressful was my attitude toward her during those games. And it was a spiritual discipline and a transforming thing for me to learn how to just be quiet in that moment and to I think God really intervened in my relationship with my daughter. That was the beginning of a change in our relationship where, she's a pretty strong-willed person, and I don't know where she gets that. But God said, you can either butt heads with her or you can come alongside her and channel her energy into good things. And so pay attention to what God is asking. Don't just randomly pick things. Say, what do I need to let go of and what do I need to engage in to live a Sabbath simplicity life?